So the buses have stopped rolling, the microphones turned to the off position, and the campaign trail has gone quiet this Christmas Eve for what may be the last time between now and November 3rd, 2020. Former Vice President Joe Biden breaks from the trail in the most comfortable position, according to a new Morning Consult poll. A solid 10-point lead over Senator Sanders, a 16-point lead over Senator Warren. Last week's debate, it appears, barely moved the needle at all. Joining me now, Republican strategist Adam Goodman and Democratic strategist Michael Starr Hopkins. He has worked on campaigns for Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and John Delaney. Gentlemen, great to have both of you with us. Adam, let me begin with you, if I may. The candidates have a chance to recharge over the holiday break, rethink, redouble their efforts, if you will. If you're a candidate like Pete Buttigieg, Andrew Yang, maybe someone even further down, Mike Bloomberg, stuck in the single digits nationally, what changes can you possibly make to get out of the gate come Thursday?
Well, what you're hoping for to begin with is that the focus starts to shift more and more to Iowa and away from Washington and the impeachment, because every day that is lost there is a day they can't recapture to have a breakthrough moment. In terms of retooling message right now, you're into the battleground of the state, starting with Iowa, where the biggest number to watch, frankly, is not just poll movement, but the thermometer. Because when you get to February 3rd, it's likely that you're going to be looking at sub-freezing temperatures on caucus night, requiring people to come out for 3 hours or more to stand up for those they believe in. I think that's, the colder it is, it's probably bad news for Joe Biden, who I think has maybe less passion going behind his base and his supporters. Better news for people like Bernie Sanders and Mayor Pete. So I think the messages will remain the same. I think there was a tease going into this segment about Tulsi and her travails. I think she's now auditioning more for a Republican conversion than the Democratic nomination. But a lot of fireworks to come. But the biggest concern, again, I think all contenders, Democratic contenders have, is how long will the impeachment hearings go on? Because every day lost there is a day they can't recapture.
All right, so interestingly enough, you brought up Tulsi Gabbard. I want to talk about her just for a moment. She doesn't crack, in the top six national. It doesn't crack in the top six of the candidates in any of the national poll, but she is topping the headlines consistently, and even more recently after the former governor of Hawaii, a Democrat, called for her to resign her seat in Congress. Neil Abercrombie told Politico, quote, "Gabbard has rented a home in New Hampshire. She has missed more than 85% of votes since October, despite voting present on President Donald Trump's impeachment last week." Michael, I want to get your thoughts. Is this a fair criticism against Tulsi Gabbard, or is this a backlash against a Democrat by the establishment who didn't stay and has not been staying in line and didn't vote to impeach the president?
I think it's absolutely a fair criticism. I mean, at least Republicans let you know where they stood on the issue. Tulsi Gabbard voting present was just an abdication of her duty. She continues to take taxpayer money from her constituents without showing up to do the actual job she was hired to do. So if she doesn't want to show up to do her job, if she doesn't want to do it, then she should leave. She should quit.
So one of the things also is that Tulsi Gabbard seems to have taken on the Democratic establishment. How long do you think, Adam, she can continue to stay in the race? And does her presence shake things up a little bit? Does it move the needle in one direction or the other?
Well, I think she, in terms of being a viable contender in this race, I think her days are clearly numbered. But more importantly is basically the square off in the Democratic primary between what is described as the progressives and the centrists, and what impact she and everybody else may have on that. The biggest thing to watch, I believe, in Iowa is not just who wins and who loses, but you might say the cumulative vote of the progressives versus the more centrist candidates. If you look at 2016, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders fought to a dead heat in Iowa, basically a 50-50 square off there. I think that's the tale of the tape to come, and is the one hope that someone like Mike Bloomberg would have, that there is a collapsing, you might say, narrative for the centrist candidates, and now suddenly perhaps the Democrats are looking for an alternative. That may be a Mike Bloomberg on Super Tuesday, when 40% of the delegates will be decided.
All right, I want to bring in Sonam Sheth. She's a political correspondent for Business Insider, joining this conversation. Let's talk a little bit about the diversity issue here, because over the course of the past couple of weeks, we've seen as the debate stage thins out a little bit, the diversity has been the first to go. We have a good political representation, if you will, from the Democratic Party between the base and the more progressive wings with the Sanders, Warren, and the Biden camps, and even the centrists like a Buttigieg. But at the same time, we're not getting any diversity. How concerning is that for the Democratic Party? And two, are we likely to see a reemergence of somebody like Cory Booker?
I think it's definitely a factor to consider, especially because Latino voters, for example, are going to be the largest non-white voting bloc in the 2020 election. And I think that's why we're seeing candidates like Pete Buttigieg roll out immigration plans that are targeted towards voters who those issues would be important to. But certainly that was something that was a criticism towards this last Democratic debate, that it was virtually an all-white stage with the exception of Andrew Yang. But I think it's a little bit early to say that diversity is going to continue to be an issue just because it's so early in the race. And so we could certainly see candidates like Cory Booker reemerge, as the Iowa caucuses come up in the next few months. But I think that generally, that's a reason why candidates like Buttigieg and Warren and Sanders, especially Bernie Sanders, for example, who had a town hall recently, which was a Spanish language town hall. And so I think that's why we're seeing candidates push out platforms towards more diverse voting blocs.
All right, Sanam Sheth, Adam Goodman, Michael Starr Hopkins, thank you all, very much for joining us.